Hello and welcome to another Industry Careers for PhDs podcast brought to you by Cheeky Scientist. I'm your host, Isaiah Henkel, and today we will be talking with Emma Hitt on careers in medical writing. If you're interested in listening to the full version of this interview, go to cheekyscientist.com/association and learn how you can become an associate and get access to all of our materials for helping PhDs transition into non-academic careers. If you would like to get these highlights delivered to your email inbox when they are released, go to cheekyscientist.com and subscribe under where it says Start Here. You can also subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. So today we will be talking to Emma Hitt. Her company is Nascent Medical LLC, formerly Hitt Medical Writing LLC, which serves to help people continue their medical education, medical content publishing, develop these skills, specifically helping PhDs and MDs with their writing ability so that they can either start their own businesses as freelance medical writers, or they can get hired by larger firms in medical writing. Dr. Hitt herself is a seasoned medical communications professional specializing in CME and news writing for a clinical audience. She's been doing this since 1999 in lots of different areas, hematology, oncology, rheumatoid arthritis, several medical fields. She completed her PhD from Emory University. She has a 6-week online course called Everything You Need to Know to Start Your Freelance Medical Writing Business. Today, we are going to focus specifically on helping PhDs get into the medical writing field. So we're going to jump in with Dr. Hitt now. Very excited to have you on today, Emma. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so I wanted to start off real simple and kind of break it down, because we have people that know exactly what medical writing is, and we have others that are just they want to learn a little bit more and see if it might be right for them. So can you tell us what, on a basic level, kind of a bird's eye view of what is involved in being a medical writer?
Sure, absolutely. So basically all it is what it sounds like, so medical writing, and it's basically any type of written communications involving medicine. And it can be split up into about 3 general categories. So one of them is writing for clinicians, doctors, and that would be continuing medical education, manuscripts. A lot of the journal articles that you see are written by medical writers, that kind of thing. And then there's a second group, which is regulatory writing, which is all the documents and documentation for the FDA, so new drug applications and prescribing information, things like that. And then the third category is writing for consumer audience. So that would be feature magazines and newspapers and online portals and things like that. That's basically the 3 main categories of medical writing.
Great. So there are these subcategories, and I think that's important because for those of you listening, there are a variety, and there are very different audiences you can write for, but surely you can write for all 3 too. I want to transition a little bit. Okay, so that's kind of the basic understanding. We're going to dig in here, but I want to talk a little bit about your story and your transition. Emma, as we know, we have a lot of PhDs, huh? You're also a PhD who are looking to transition into something like medical writing, a different industry, not stay in academia. This is something you've done, so maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you got into this profession.
Sure, absolutely. I love telling this story because I like to think that it gives hope to people that are currently getting their PhD and they're just having a really hard time of it.
Yeah.
So I started at Emory in 1994, which makes me older than I like to think, but 1994, and I was at Emory for 6 years getting my PhD, and right in the middle of it, I knew that I was just working too hard for too long to go into a postdoc and, not earn good money and work 80 hours a week. So I just started thinking about what can I do that would combine science. And I had been told back in college before then that I had talent as a writer, and I didn't think much of that at the time, but that came back, and I thought, well, maybe is there a way I can combine science and writing? And so it was just when the internet was starting, which is incredible to think about. So that was like 99, it was just when I had access to internet at Emory, obviously, and I started searching online, and I found the National Association of Science Writers, and I just made the decision, right in the middle of all that I was going to become a science writer, and then it morphed into medical writing, which is that's kind of like a subgroup of science writing, and I started, editing people's dissertations and taking on any freelance work I could, and then I also got a master's in technical writing, so that's what prepared me for all of that.
Okay,
so
great,
that's the story.
No, and I love it too, and I mean, this is the perfect audience because the one thing that we do is try to show that there are all these other alternative career options out there, and
and can I add to that too? It was faced with quite significant opposition by my dissertation committee, and back then it wasn't quite as popular as it is these days, where alternative careers in science, it's kind of a buzzword, but back then it was not. And so if anybody's in that situation and people tell them, well, what are you doing throwing away a perfectly good career in science? If medical writing is something that you're drawn to, and also the lifestyle associated with it, then, just believe in yourself and believe in that process. And because life is too short to, be in academia or whatever it is if you don't want to do that.
Well said. So, I really appreciate that. And, a lot of people that are listening right now, they might not be in a position to speak up or whatever it is, but just knowing, it's good to hear that from other external sources. And so if you are in that position and you're listening, take that message seriously. Go after what you want to do, the lifestyle you want. Don't let other people tell you what you should be doing. Great message. Thank you.
Exactly.
So let's simple question. What do you like about your job? So why was it the right fit for you?
So it's a very good question. And I think sometimes I don't realize how lucky I am, because other people have jobs and I hear horror stories about their jobs, and I'm like, I'm glad I don't have to do that. So, the thing I like most about medical writing, it's a constant learning about a wide range of topics, and it's a broad knowledge, and you end up knowing a lot about health, which is useful to people in your life. I know where to look anything up, no matter what. I'm not a medical doctor, but I can look stuff up and things like that. I can help my friends and family. And it's kind of in contrast to a PhD study where you are just kind of looking at the function of a single protein or something very narrow like that. So I like that broad knowledge that you get. I love talking to scientists about their work. They're always, uniformly excited about talking to you. And I like, it's kind of a non-emotional, and there's a lot of integrity in the industry. I mean, you're dealing with scientists, and it's I don't have to deal with, whatever other people have to deal with. My husband's a divorce lawyer. I mean, he deals with emotional stuff, I don't have to deal with any of that except perhaps a client who's under a deadline. I mean, that's the hardest thing I have to deal with. So it's a very cool thing. And then I love working at home on my own schedule. There's no travel, although I did travel extensively because I wanted to travel, but nowadays I don't travel so much. And so it's an ideal profession for kids and family. And then, of course, the pay is, my first year out of grad school, I made $90,000, and I haven't looked back. So it's very nice like that.
Yes. No, and it's important to do. And I think that probably just blew a lot of people's minds, right? We always talk about these false conceptions we have. As a PhD, you can either do, meaningful work or you can have a nice work-life balance, or you can make a lot of money. But there's no reason you can't do all of those things at once.
Right, exactly.
So that's fantastic. Okay, so let's get a little bit more granular now. So let's say somebody listening wants to become a medical writer. Let's start with the recruitment process. What does that look like?
Yeah, so you have to decide if you're the kind of person that wants to do freelance medical writing, or if you want to go find a staff job somewhere. And people often think that a staff job is going to be more secure and this, that, and the other. But I can tell you that it's, the only security you have is how good you are at your job. So I would say, don't think of staff jobs being that secure. But if you wanted to get a staff job, I would recommend reaching out to recruiters in the industry. You can find that on LinkedIn very easily. I mean, medical writing is a job that's in demand. A good medical writer is hard to find, especially one that's willing to work on site somewhere rather than remotely. And many companies want medical writers to come into an office. So if you're willing to do that, and you're reasonably good at writing, then that job will be open to you.
No, that's a good distinction to make between the freelancing or versus working for a staff. I think I like that you started with that, just because it's one of the first decisions I think should be made before pursuing the career.
Sure.
So continue, yeah, please.
Oh, and then freelancing, it's a different thing, and we'll cover that, I guess, in another question further down. But if you're looking to be recruited for a staff job, you'll probably need to take a writing test. So it's good to read. I recommend like at least 5 books that you can get on Kindle or Barnes and Noble, whatever, and really brush up on your writing skills. You should know how to write.
Yeah.
And it's not something you necessarily do know how to do unless you've studied it. So that's the first step too.
Good note. Before entering a career in medical writing, make sure you actually like to write.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So what are let's see. So let's say we have some people on right now that are probably considering, okay, I'd like to write, but I still want to know if it's right for me. What other questions besides obviously liking to write, liking to read? How would you know if it's the right career for you? And a secondary question is, what kind of skills could you look at that are transferable from a PhD into that career?
Well, I would say most people with a PhD are pretty smart. And that, you can't substitute intelligence. You can make up for it to some extent with hard work, but with medical writing, where you're faced with synthesizing large volumes of data and making decisions all day long about how you're going to present information. So it really helps to be pretty sharp. And there's just no other way around that. But everybody on this call obviously has that criteria met, so I'm not worried about that one. It does help if you have an aptitude for writing. It helps if you're the person in the lab that the professor goes to look over their work, or people have told you, wow, I really like your writing, it's really good. That's a good sign, but it doesn't have to be that way. But you do have to have that aptitude, and you don't have to love writing. I mean, if I write for 40 hours in a week, I'm not feeling much love for the writing at that point, but I don't mind it, and I'm good at it. So you have to have that aptitude. And then the science background, obviously. It's interesting. I mean, my science background was in cancer-related cell signaling, and the number of times I've written on that exact topic is maybe 5 times. So I'm always writing about things that I don't know that much about, but I sure do know how to look them up and look up review articles and things like that. So it helps if you're not intimidated at all by the medical literature. You can get your head around anything pretty quickly. That helps. So I would say that's it. Yeah.
No. So those are some good transferable skills, and I think they're skills that already most of you listening have.
Exactly. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I would say one more thing too. If you've been a PhD in a lab and you've done experiments and you've dealt with your experiments failing and you've suffered through, because we all know how hard it is to get a degree in a science, a PhD. If you've done that, that is like the best training for freelance medical writing, at least, where it's just, you just got to put yourself out there and keep going and stay encouraged to. Yes. So that if you can survive that, then this will be a breeze.
No, and I'm really happy you said that, because we're always talking about what transferable skills do I actually have? Well, learning to deal with failure is a very important transferable skill, and there's a reason. Every interview is going to ask you a time when you have to deal with conflict. So it's the field of medical writing is not immune to that, and I think that's important for all you guys listening. Great stuff, and you're enthused. I think Irina said it in the chat box here. Your passion for writing is definitely contagious. So great stuff.
Thank you.
Let's talk very, very tactical here. What preparation should PhDs be doing right now if they want to enter this profession? Let's say they're at the end of their graduate school career, or what's hopefully the last year of a postdoc, right? Or let's say they're unemployed at home watching TV. What things can they do right now to start preparing for this career?
Well, it depends. If your goal is to be a freelancer right after you get your PhD, you should start now trying to get clients, set up a website. I would say, and this isn't self-promotion, but I would say buy my book. It's called Freelance Medical Writing, and you can buy it on Amazon. And if you can't afford to buy it, just email me and I'll give you a free copy. If we could I think you should just read my book, and it tells you everything that you need to do. You're
going to get hundreds of emails now.
I know. Well, if I give you a free copy, you have to tell somebody about it. That's all. That's all I ask. Yeah. But yeah. So and then also, like I've said, read some books on actual writing. I'm trying to think of a good style. Elements of style. I can't remember the elements of style and Strunk and White. Yeah, and just anything you can find in Barnes and Noble about writing.
Yeah, great advice there. And I'll just add, I think it's that what you said is get your own clients. I'm sure a lot of people's jaws just dropped, like, how is that even possible, right? So, but building up a client base and start, using the same skills you guys have learned, in the association on networking, pitching yourself. Like, you can start using these skills now to get clients that you can write for. I mean, there's a massive need right now. It's a growing field. It's not shrinking at all. They need writers.
Sure
content in general is so popular, and being able to write at a high level on these topics, there's very few people that can do that consistently, especially. So.
Sure.
And so I like that you're talking about a lot of the crossover stuff. So like some of these books, like it doesn't matter if you have a PhD in English or science, like you still need to be able to write well. So elements of style, there's a book called On Writing Well, all these different things, they do apply.
Yeah.
And so I think that's very, very solid advice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about actually applying for jobs. So you call them staff positions versus freelance positions. I also want to talk about how you'd actually reach out for clients, but let's go here first. So in terms of resumes, networking, what kind of strategy would you put in place if you wanted to get a staff writing job?
Okay, so staff writing job, I would make a medical writer's resume, which will be about a page or 2 pages. So it's very different than an academic CV. And then you also want to pull out all the writing that you've ever done. I mean, whatever you can pull out, make that highlight. Make an effort at least to direct it towards medical writing. And if you've taken a course or whatever, then highlight that, a course in writing. Make sure that stands out. And then, like I said, so reach out to recruiters, and also not to be self-promotional again, but I have something called the Hitt list, which is every Tuesday it goes out, and it's free, it's totally free, and you just sign up to it and type it into Google, Hitt list, and it's medical writing jobs, and many of those are staff jobs.
Yes.
And so that's a good way, at least, to see the recruiters. There's a lot of applicants to each of those jobs, I'm sure, but the recruiters can be contacted. So that's free.
Yes. And just to recap, you guys, I mean, you're hearing the same exact strategies you're learning for other positions, right? The 2-page resume, the more industry-style resume, the networking, the reaching out to recruiters. Great stuff. So,
yes.
Okay, let's flip it. So let's say you want to be a freelance writer. The number one thing you have to do is get your own client base. So how does that look? Any strategies that have worked for you over the years?
Yeah, so really the only thing I've really done extensively is to send out emails to, so what I would do normally is I would join the AMWA, American Medical Writers Association, which is the main professional organization. And there's other similar related associations. So there's one called ASAP, and I can't even remember what that stands for, but that, if you join those associations and you have access to their member directory, and you don't want to spam people, but you can certainly reach out with email and just introduce yourself with a brief email. And I talk about how to do this in my book. I give an example of the email that is good to send. And, it's a numbers game, so you'll end up sending about 100 emails. But after that 100 emails, you should have at least one new client. Another thing to do is join AMWA at the local level. Most big cities have an active chapter. And if you're not near that chapter, you can also reach out to the people at National, the National head office. They're always needing help with various initiatives they've got going on. I actually have a podcast called Medical Writers Speak, and I just interviewed the presidents of AMWA, the president and president-elect of AMWA, and so that's pretty interesting to listen to if you're interested in joining AMWA and everything that they offer. Let's see, what else?
Yes.
What was the question again?
How to get building up that client base. I guess, have you ever had any aha moments in your career when you were searching, like let's say you started doing this when you first started building up a client base and then you switched to this and you got more clients, like any kind of those insider tips?
Yeah, very good question. I would say the hardest part is getting started. It's like pushing a hurdle uphill, boulder uphill. After that, like if you're good and if you're responsive to your clients and you're friendly, easy to work with, that's all of those things, you do good work, you are going to be overloaded with work like pretty quickly, I would say. I mean, I haven't had to market, as an individual writer, I haven't had to market my services for a long while, which is nice because it's kind of tedious to do it.
Yes.
But this industry, the medical writing industry, is pretty small, and so word gets around, and unfortunately it probably gets around for the good and the bad, but if you do good work, you're going to get referrals, and it just is a matter of just attending to people's emails and requests too, when be responsive to emails.
Emma said that can be valuable, joining the different associations, the American Medical Writers Association, whatever it might be. But they're valuable for the network and the list of the people involved in that. It's not valuable for the title, right, or just to get in it. Like you have to get in there and then you have to network afterwards. And networking is very similar to, like just Emma said, it's very similar to marketing. And most of your efforts in the beginning are going to go towards networking, marketing, pitching yourself. But eventually, once you have your client base, that'll tend to take care of itself through word of mouth and stuff. It doesn't matter what business it is. This is certainly the case, and especially if you're a freelancer.
Yeah, and I would also add that my policy or my approach has always been it sounds Pollyanna, but I always feel that if you give enough, or if you attract people to you rather than promote yourself, then it's much better. People think sales is being aggressive, but really, if you go to somebody and say, "Look, I want to help you out somehow," then that goes a much further in getting a response. And one of the things I'm really glad I did in 2003, that's when I started the Hitt list, which now has it has thousands of subscribers to it now, and it's all free and everything. And that was free, and it cost me money to send it out, but that's done more in terms of name recognition. So I would say that anybody that's starting out, think about how you can add value to your clients or on your website. I mean, can you provide an industry update? What is it that you can do that will attract people to your website rather than, running after clients?
Yeah, no.
That makes sense.
It does, absolutely. And so it's a very important point. And we've talked about this a lot, you guys. We talk about adding value first. Don't ask what you can take, ask what you can give first. And giving that value in terms of content, whether you want to call it content marketing or whatever else, it's important. Emma's talked about having a website, talked about having a blog where you can write about certain topics that are relevant to the types of topics you want to write about for money. There's a variety of ways to do this now. You can publish articles on LinkedIn, internally on LinkedIn, and these things, they get read. We've had people in the group who have, in the association, who have started their own website and have started posting blog articles, people who have started doing their own series on LinkedIn, and have drastically increased their network because of it. So I think that's really great advice. Give that value first, in terms of great content, add a ton of value, and you'll build up that client base. So great stuff. And also lots of resources too. Like Emma said, you guys can see her book here, and then there's a couple of links where you can get more information. Okay, so I want to stay on that for a second. So obviously giving the value, the network, I know it's always hard to think back. It's hard because things are different now, right? With the internet's changed so much. And I mean, if we had to talk about the cutting edge, right? You're obviously at the top of your field. What kind of things are you seeing on the cutting edge? Like a few takeaways you could give the audience right now that would put them ahead of other people who haven't listened to this webinar.
Oh my goodness! Oh, you've stumped me.
Well, what things do you see working for you in terms of when you talk to people or when you're onboarding a new client, like maybe more operationally. So we talk about getting new clients, but how do you manage all of this? How has that changed over the years?
Yeah. Oh, well, I guess so. I've got a lot more clients than I could handle individually. So I have a lot of writers that work with me.
Yeah.
And so that, so I started out as a one-person shop, and it was really in 2011 when I brought on subcontractors, and it's changed the nature of my job, and I'm more managing people now than I am doing the actual writing myself, although I do some. So, but I guess if you want to, I don't know if I'm really answering the question that you asked.
No, you are. This is great, because I think people never see the operational stuff that happens. How you grow, right? So you start off, you get the first couple of clients. Like, how do you scale?
Exactly. That's a very good question, and I did not think about it at all when I started. I had an Excel spreadsheet with columns and rows for each of my clients and all the projects, and it quickly just became untenable. I mean, it was just because you're always in a process of having to send out an invoice, receiving an invoice, or receiving a check, and you have to keep really good track, because you can't go to your client and act like they haven't paid you when you've received payment, that kind of thing. So you have to keep really good records. And so I swear by QuickBooks Online. That's really important, and it'll keep track of all your profit and loss. You need to have a separate business account for your business, whether or not you form an LLC. You don't have to do that when you start, but you have to separate everything out, business and personal. And then and QuickBooks Online is only about $250 a year, something like that. And then I also use something that's a little more higher scale. That I had to use this when I took on subcontractors, because it was way complex otherwise. And it's a program called QuickBase, which is also made by the makers of QuickBooks. It's like a content CRM, whatever that stands for, content resource management system. So it's like, it helps you, right, exactly. So every new project I get in, it gets a record associated with it, and I how much the client's paying, who's the subcontractor, this, that, and the other. And that way it's really easy to sort it into reports. You can see what percentage of sales you're doing on X, Y, and Z. And so that's really important. To scale up, you have to have processes in place. Also, when you bring on subcontractors, that's like a whole nother level, right? So you can guarantee your own work, but when it comes to guaranteeing other people's work, that's a little harder. So you have to have a method for bringing people on and hiring people, and all kinds of things. So it's complex.
Thank you for joining us for another Industry Careers for PhDs podcast. If you're interested in attending one of these interviews live, or if you're interested in getting access to the full interview, including all of the background materials and show notes, go to cheekyscientist.com/association and learn how to become an associate. You can get on the wait list for the next association enrollment period there and learn full details about the program. It's a program specifically designed to help PhDs transition into top industry positions. If you would like to receive more of these interview highlights via our podcast, sent directly to your email, go to cheekyscientist.com and email subscribe under where it says Start Here. If you haven't already, you can also subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. Until next week, remember your value as a PhD and start thinking and acting like a successful industry professional.